Well, hi everyone, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the sunshine of Zandvoort for race 20 in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. The cars making their way onto the grid, ready for race 2 of 3 this weekend as we reach the pivotal point of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship as our helicopter flies in over the North Sea. This is just how close the Circuit Park Zandvoort is to the beach here, and it's a fantastic holiday destination. It's a fantastic destination to have a race circuit, and there we can see the grid beginning to form. Alongside me is motorsport journalist Lee O'Gorman. We saw a good race from the FIA Formula 3 European Championship yesterday, expecting much of the same today, particularly buoyed by the fact that we have a British driver P1 on the grid, one Mr. C. Eilert, Callum to his friends.
Absolutely, and Callum had a very good qualifying session yesterday. It was initially P2, and we need to actually probably quickly explain this. The grid looks somewhat different to what actually happened in from what we saw in qualifying yesterday, as Jake Hughes, another Brit, second on the grid. Now, there was an incident during qualifying. I think if you were watching the stream yesterday, you may remember Daravala, the Carlin driver, had a massive off during the session when flying off onto one of the many gravel traps around the circuit as Lando Norris, the number 31, a third British driver, third on the grid. He gets away from the second row. Lando Norris initially set the fastest time in the session.
Yes.
Now, there were 9 penalties handed out following the Daravala off for drivers who were thought to have gone too quickly through the yellow flag zone where Daravala.
So, and that's the rule, isn't it? You have to slow for a yellow flag.
One of the drivers initially that they investigated was Callum Eilert. Now, he was the 10th driver they investigated, and they felt that the stewards felt of all the 10 drivers they investigated, he was the only one who made a concerted effort.
Lifted.
To make a concerted effort to actually slow down properly. It's Harry Newey, 5th on the grid.
Yeah, and forgive me interrupting you, it's a great opportunity for Harry here for going from P5 on the grid.
Absolutely. I think Harry was initially down in P7 or P8 or something like that, and the penalties have actually brought him up the grid. So, if we were to go through this, as we see Ferdinand Habsburg in the Carlin, who's actually had a decent weekend.
He's looked lively this weekend.
Decent couple of weekends, actually. He was very good in the race yesterday, although he finished 4th after starting 2nd. He had a great battle with poleman Callum Eilert.
Now, behind Ferdinand Habsburg, we're going to find Maximilian Günther. Now, Maximilian Günther, who is currently leading the championship, but only by a whisker over Lando Norris. And Maximilian Günther, disappointing for him, is perhaps the points haul that he's potentially got to take out of this weekend. As I say, we're reaching the sharp end of the championship. We've got the Nürburgring, Red Bull Ring and Hockenheim still to come, where every point matters. We're looking now at Nikita Mazepin. And
Günther was one of the drivers who picked up a penalty yesterday for going too fast through the yellow flag zone. And this is where it really matters. The 2 championship contenders in Eilert and Günther have taken up penalty. The 3rd championship contender, Joel Eriksson, who's actually down in... He's at 13th on the grid today, as we see Guan Yu Zhu. Eriksson also picked up a penalty for driving too quickly through the yellow flag zone. Now, so I'm going to run through quickly the drivers.
Before you run through the drivers, let's just bring you up to speed on the championship points, because Maximilian Günther is P1 on 281 points. Bear in mind where Maximilian Günther is starting today. Lando Norris is on 273 points. Bear in mind where Lando Norris is on the grid today. Then we find Joel Eriksson and Callum Eilert, and then Jihan Daravala in P5. But critically, it's where Maximilian Günther is relative to Lando Norris, in my opinion, which is really, really important as we look at the Mick Schumacher car. Forgive me, Lee. Now you go through the penalty situation.
OK, Callum Eilert is on pole. He was investigated but not penalised. Jake Hughes 2nd, no penalty. Lando Norris was pole, 2-place penalty. He's now 3rd. Beckman 4th place, no penalty. Newey 5th place, no penalty. Habsburg 6th place, 2-place penalty. Günther starts 7th, 2-place penalty. 8th Mazepin, 2-place penalty. Zhu, 9th place, 2-place penalty. Daravala, he's 10th. He was the guy who actually went off, caused the yellow flag in the first place. Schumacher, 11th, no penalty. Ralph Aron, 12th, 2-place penalty. Eriksson, 13th, 2-place penalty. Makino, he's 14th, fine. 15th is PK, then Mawson, Andres, and then the final 2 on the grid, Sato, 18th, 2-place penalty. 19th on the grid via Nathan, two-place penalty. All those drivers who received penalties also got 2 points on their driving licence.
Right.
For driving far too quickly through the yellow flag zone. So we actually have a far more jumbled up grid today than we actually saw initially would have saw from the from qualifying yesterday. They're not just penalties, of course. They're outright times that they set in those laps have been cancelled altogether. But that plays massively into this race, because you see Gunther is several positions down from where he would have started. Norris is not on pole, he's on third place, and that brings its own issues, because if you're on pole you have the opportunity to get into cleanly into turn one, but now you're behind the two in front. The guys in front are going to guys just behind are going to go for you as well.
What is critical to it all is overtaking here at Zandvoort is not easy in these cars, it has to be said, and therefore for me the most important factor perhaps is the fact that Lando Norris is ahead of Maximilian Gunther. Lando Norris, as I mentioned, is P2 in the points on 273 points. Maximilian Gunther is P1 in the points on 281. So it is critical in terms of where those two are situated on the grid, when you take into account the fact that it is very difficult to get past cars here. We look at the Jake Hughes car, car number 34, going from P2 on the grid, the high-tech GP driver.
Jake Hughes, here's a guy who's actually got a quite interesting. He's had a so-so season so far. He's had some peaks, but also the high-tech team and Hughes have had some difficulties in parts of this year. And to be fair, there's been rounds where the high-tech team have been absolutely nowhere, and rounds where Aaron and Hughes have done very, very well, and Mazepin for that matter. Hughes has scored 2 podiums so far this year, and he's going to be looking at this thinking, the win is possible, as we see Rene Ross in as the team principal.
Looking to Callum Islet's mum there, who was beating her chest at the anxiety and nerves you must have as your boy is P1 on the grid, pole position for Callum Islet.
This is a big race for Callum as well, because he's actually fallen down the championship standings somewhat. He's fourth in the points, but he's on
196 points.
He's 85 behind the race leader Gunther, and he needs a big haul in races 2 and 3 if Norris and Gunther and Ericsson don't score much. Norris is still in the best position championship wise, as you said, in this race, third in the grid. He can actually still take in a big load of points.
Pole position here at Zandvoort means you're on the outside going into turn number 1, but you are 1 car length ahead as well, that's interesting, isn't it? As
Norbert Haug.
Norbert Haug, former Mercedes boss.
It's getting a bit arty, really, in his...
He is. He's a keen photographer, as you can see.
I think he needs to get off the grid. I think he needs to get off the grid.
It'll be a brave marshal that tells him so, won't it? Now, the point I was making is that, Jake Hughes potentially has got a good opportunity here if Callum Islet doesn't get an absolutely blistering start, because Jake Hughes could be on the inside going into turn number 1.
Jake Hughes, he's gunning for that first. He wants that first win in the Formula 3 European Championship. He wants to break that duct. And what a lot of drivers say is once you get that first win, it becomes a little bit easier thereafter. You understand it more. He's got 2 podiums. If they can nail that win, and it would be a first win for High Tech this season, it would really make a very important mark for Jake Hughes in this campaign.
Very important for the driver, very important for the team as well. The relationship between the driver and team is so critical and so important in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. The cars screaming through this Zandvoort circuit then, and here comes the grid in full for you. Callum Islet and Jake Hughes are on the front row. Then it's Lando Norris and David Beckman, who of course was on his roof earlier in the on his roll hoop earlier in the weekend. And then it's Harrison Newey and Ferdinand Habsburg, Maximilian Gunther, Nikita Mazepin. Then it's Guan Yu Zhu and Jihan Daravala, Mick Schumacher, Ralph Aron. Then it's Ericsson, Makino, PK Mawson, Andrei Sato and Vadyanathan.
Case in point, with all the penalties that have happened, we see Beckman and Newey with 1 minute 28.5 each. The following 4 drivers after them all had laps that were 2 tenths quicker than them. So they've actually jumped 2 complete rows, both of them. So that's how much the penalties have actually affected the grid for this race.
Here is the track layout then. It's 4.3 kilometres. It's some 13 turns, 4 of them left, 9 of them are right-handers. The race duration, as you can see, is 33 minutes plus 1 lap as the cars make their way around the final turn, the Ari Lyondike turn, the turn number 13, and make their way into their grid boxes for the start of race number 2. Qualifying for races 2 and 3 were set yesterday, and it's the fastest time of Quali 2 that sets the grid for race 2, barring penalties, which Lee has more than adequately described for us, but it's the second fastest time of Quali 2 that sets the grid for race number 3. Air temperature 19.5, track temperature just a few degrees higher. Callum Islet in his grid box. Those that are on the front rows of the grid, of course, have to wait for the rest of the pack to make their way into their grid boxes, and it's a fair wait, waiting for Sato and Vadyanathan to make their way into their grid boxes. We await the green flag from the marshal right at the rear of the pack. And once we get that, we can get the start sequence underway, and it will be all systems go. Jake Hughes will feel he has got a great opportunity here. The green flag is waved then. It is race 2 of 3 across this weekend in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. As the engine note rises, so too does the level of anticipation. Callum Islet will try and dive to the inside. So does Lando Norris from P3. Side by side, Beckman and Harrison Newey as they run into turn number 1. A little bit of a lock-up from Lando Norris. And Harrison Newey P4 then as they make their way towards turn number 2 and then into the little bank section, which is turn number 3, the left-hander.
Someone off put a wheel on the gravel there, lost a couple of positions, and I think it might have been one of the high-tech cars, possibly Mazepin, as they come around the first couple of corners and towards the long and leaning turn 5 section.
Callum Islet beginning to stretch his legs out front then and try and build himself a little bit of an advantage. They run downhill and then round the back of this Circuit Park Zandvoort here, the first lap in this race 2 of the Formula 3 European Championship, which is being led by Callum Islet. Jake Hughes is P2, Lando Norris is P3, then it's Harrison Newey, then we find Beckman and Habsburg and Maximilian Gunter in the mix as well.
And off, someone's got straight on. It's the exit of Renault corner, and it beached, and it is the number 5 of Pedro Piquet. That's parked. You're not going to get that out, Pedro. No matter how much you spin those rear wheels, you are done.
Van Amersfoort driver Pedro Piquet then as the safety car is deployed straight away, and this is bad news for Callum Islet, who'd built a reasonable margin in the opening lap, hadn't he? Or what we had of the opening lap before Pedro Piquet then absolutely just didn't appear to turn in at all. It just went straight on, that car.
And Pedro was running 14th place when he went off. And yeah, it did look as if there was no real effort or ability to turn. He just went straight into the gravel, and that was going absolutely nowhere once he was beached. And that's one of the characteristics of this Zandvoort circuit. You have the gravel traps here, but they're deep gravel traps as well. They're not shallow in any way, shape or form.
I was just looking at the, you can see him replay here.
And
now,
bang!
Oh, there was
bang.
a touch, wasn't
and
there?
from a teammate, that's Mawson. Mawson, who's pitted actually. He's actually battered Piquet with his right rear. That's not going to go down well at all in the Van Amersfoort team.
No, Joey Mawson then, Formula 4 champion, came into the FIA Formula 3 European Championship, and that's the worst thing in the world in one team, isn't it, to have two teammates collide like that?
On the other hand, Piquet was on the outside.
There, that was the rim I was looking at. You could see the damage on that front rim there.
But Piquet was on the outside of the corner and partially behind, because effectively that is Mawson's right rear collecting to the left front. So Piquet, realistically, you got to think you probably should get out of that kind of position if it's lost.
Well, Mawson is back out again, and he will try and pick up the Crocodile, which at the moment is running behind the safety car.
Wouldn't surprise me if he got a puncture from that.
Well, the incident is noted. Now, normally we would see a message on our timing screen that would say the incident is being investigated. It's the first time, Lee, that I've seen that on the timing screen or our message board where it says the incident is being noted. Here's a replay of the start. It was a great start from Callum Islet. He knew he'd got to nail it. He knew he'd got to get it right because Jake Hughes was always going to be very lively. It was brilliant driving from Harrison Newey, who's all the way around the outside of Beckman. You can see the cars side by side, but slotted into that P4 position for Harrison Newey.
And yeah, I think I'm right. I think it was Mazepin who actually went off on the... yes, it was Mazepin who went off in the exit of turn 2 there and almost lost... Well, actually did eventually lose him a position to... I think it was Schumacher. It was Schumacher and either Schumacher or Zhu who went by in a great slow motion shot.
Oh, this is a fantastic shot.
As you see Lando Norris locking in.
He did lock a little, didn't he?
And I hope he hasn't actually locked that too much because there's still quite a... that was only the first lap of the race. There's still some 29 minutes left to go, although the safety car is still out. when they do eventually get going, that's going to absolutely rattle his teeth if it continues to lock coming into certain corners. But I think he may have got away with that. It's not too harsh of a lock-up.
And we've certainly seen bigger lockups than that, haven't we? So I'm sure you're absolutely right. So that really is almost a frame-by-frame slow-mo of turn number 1. And this was the Mawson and PK incident.
PK was, I think, was a bit too. He should have got out of that. I think when the way the cars were turning in, Mawson pretty much had the inside, and we're seeing now as a formal investigation between Mawson and PK.
And there he is, PK then, who's out of this race, and that's bitter disappointment for Pedro Piquet, P13 in the championship, as his stricken Van Amersfoort car then is pulled off, and that means that the safety car will be in pretty quickly, and we'll go back to race action in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship then, as the car is taken away. And actually the damage to that is probably pretty limited. It will have picked up a great deal of gravel across the floor, but that will all be sorted out by the Van Amersfoort team. And there, well, that's disappointing for Pedro Piquet to see all those cars going past, because he is going to have no further part in this race.
And you see the gap, the beginning of the gap in the gates there, where the marshals can remove that car. Yeah, it's probably not an awful lot of damage in the sense that it's probably the front wheel or the front suspension's taking a bit of a knock. But it's little things, it's things you don't think about. Like for example, the gravel that's probably now buried under the floor of that car. That is one of the things that's actually going to take a while to clear, because that's one of the, because you then have to remove the floor. You got to get the cleaners, the guys into like reaching with their hands and just claw all the bits of dirt and gravel and horribleness from what it gets lodged in the insides of the car. That actually takes a little bit of time.
No further action between Joey Mawson and PK, considered to be a racing incident, and therefore no further action. That's the latest information we can give you.
Which is probably absolutely right.
I think it is.
It's a first lap incident. You could argue PK probably shouldn't have been there. He maybe should have gotten out of it. And Mawson didn't exactly take the corner in the tightest line either. But
then he's got the right to take whatever line he wants.
He was ahead.
And
but I don't think
his race, has been utterly compromised now, hasn't it?
Yeah, realistically, there's no need for a penalty there. It is, as you said, a racing incident, and just one of those things that happens on the first lap. It's just unfortunate. It was two teammates.
Safety car is coming in this lap. Now, Callum Eilert, who'd done a great job at the start and was beginning to build a comfortable margin over Jake Hughes, he's got to do it all over again. And what he will do, he will back them all up. And it will be the responsibility of Callum Eilert to control the pace of the restart. And Callum Eilert, Jake Hughes, Lando Norris, Harrison Newey, then it's David Beckman, Ferdinand Habsburg, Maximilian Gunter then. Bear in mind, Lando Norris is P3, Maximilian Gunter is P7 at the moment. And that is critical in terms of where the points are. And as I mentioned, we've got the rounds at Nürburgring, Spielberg, and then the grand finale at Hockenheim to come. So we are reaching a point where absolutely every single point is critical as the drivers head towards the conclusion of the championship this year. We've seen some phenomenal racing from Formula 3, and we're expecting race 2, when it resumes after this safety car intervention, to be just the same.
Realistically, we'd actually had very few position changes on the start. So
absolutely, you're right. Okay, so whilst we get this safety car then underway, and there you can see on one of the marshal posts that as they go into the chicane in turn number 10, the so-called Audi S, and Callum Eilert then beginning to give it a footfall now, just the final turns of 12 and 13, Harry Leyendyk. And I have to say, Callum Eilert, you've done a jolly good job there. You're broken away from the pack. It's his responsibility, and he can decide when to give it a footfall, and he's done just that as the cars cross the timing line and break the beam now. Callum Eilert leads from Jake Hughes, then it's Lando Norris, Harrison Newey, Beckman, then it's Habsburg, Gunter, Daruvala.
And it's Guan Yu under pressure there from Mick Schumacher, looking around the outside. It's not going to happen there as he switch back to the inside of turn 2, and then turn 3. Green flags waving as Callum Islet leads coming into the fifth lap of this race.
So Jake Hughes then, he will be under pressure shortly, I would suspect, from Lando Norris, but Harrison Newey's under a bit of pressure. David Beckman is very, very close to him. There's Joey Mawson, who's already got ahead of the Sato car. Of course, Joey Mawson had to go into the pit lane. His race has been compromised because of that incident with Pedro Piquet, which no further action is going to be taken. And P1 and P2, Callum Islet and Jake Hughes just about breaking away from Lando Norris. Lando Norris needs to keep in this mix, doesn't he? Ahead of Harrison Newey and Beckman. There is Newey, there's Beckman, there's Ferdinand Habsburg, Maximilian Gunter in P7, then it's Shihan Daravala.
And we've already seen Mawson get past Sato there. The one driver who really needs to make a move is Joel Eriksson, down in 13th place at the moment. He's third in the championship, but if he's some 23 points behind championship leader Maxi Gunther.
And he's out of the points where he is at the moment,
yeah,
isn't
he needs a big score. He needs to really get moving, but unfortunately he's struggling to do that on a circuit which is very difficult to overtake on. One driver who's had a very good opening stint in this race is a driver who's actually had a difficult weekend so far has been David Beckman.
Keep your eyes perhaps on Maximilian Gunter here as he's reeling in. Ferdinand Habsburg. Is Maximilian Gunter going to dive to the inside? But Ferdinand Habsburg, we've seen over the race that we've had already this weekend, is stoic in defence. He's a very difficult driver to get past. So let's keep our eyes on that, because that's the closest battle and arguably one of the most critical battles. As there you can see Guan Yu Zhu and Mick Schumacher. Mick Schumacher in the number 25 car, Guan Yu Zhu in the number 8 car, but there is Habsburg and Gunter. It's the fight for P6 at the moment. Maximilian Gunter needs to bank as many points as he can, but he's got that Ferdinand Habsburg car ahead of him, and that's going to be a very difficult car to overtake.
Habsburg is a very defensively minded driver. He tends to have he likes to bring himself right across the circuit. It's something we saw, as you said, yesterday in race 1. We've seen him previous championships where Habsburg, he really pushes the line somewhat in terms of defensive driver, but he rarely ever goes over it. He's just aggressive in defense. Maybe not the most attacking driver in the world, but when he gets a good qualifying position, he really does hold on to that place, and we've seen him actually have success at Spa some weeks ago already. So it is slowly but surely coming to Ferdinand. He's bringing in some good results, and it's a good effort for the young man.
Well, his defensive driving is something I enjoy very much, because he really proves to be a challenge to overtake, and that's exactly what we want to see. Now, a couple of cars under investigation for a potential jump start. The number 27 car of Jihan Daravala, and also the number 33 car of Marino Sato, the Moto Park driver. Islet leads, and Islet has a very healthy lead of 1.6 over Jake Hughes. Then it's Norris, Newey, Beckman, and then it's Ferdinand Habsburg being chased down by Maximilian Gunter. Maximilian Gunter, of course, running a new livery this weekend, a new colour scheme across that number 3 car. And there is Jake Hughes. There's Lando Norris. He doesn't seem to have the pace today that he had yesterday. In truth, Lando Norris not looking as feisty as perhaps I thought he would. I thought he'd be on the back of Jake Hughes. Really, I did.
But is he on worn tyres?
Possibly so, and he did have that lock-up earlier on that you mentioned.
There's a very limited tyre usage over the course of an FIA Formula 3 weekend, and generally that means at some point for one of the races you're going to have to use tyres that have done maybe a practice session or maybe done a qualifying session. So you get into the race, one of the races with maybe partially used set of tyres, or maybe have used on one side, depending on which, because we've actually got so many right-hand corners on this circuit compared to left-hand corners. The actual the tyres on the left-hand side tend to take a little bit more of a beating, particularly because we've got 2 very long right-hand bends, and this is one of them, coming through the long winding last set of corners. It's just triple apex, right. So the outside left tyres are actually taking quite a beating through this.
Habsburg, has pulled away from Maximilian Gunter now, and Gunter is nowhere near close enough to be able to have a go at him. Callum Islet adds another couple of tenths to his margin at the front. Great driving from Callum Islet then, who of course had to do it all over again following that safety car intervention and restart. Therefore, car number 33, no further action, but that's Marina Sato, but Jihan Daravala, who is currently P8, is going to get a drive-through penalty, Lee.
Starting P10, I wonder if that's, he probably just, if it was a jump start, maybe he just got by Zhu and Schumacher coming into the first corner right at the start. Yeah, that was taken completely out of contention. It's not been the best of weeks so far for Daravala, who had that massive off in qualifying yesterday. That eventually brought out a red flag, or delivered all the penalties.
Harrison Newey now under some pressure from David Beckman as David Beckman gets ever closer to the number 17 Van Amersfoort engineered car. David Beckman, of course, with the Van Amersfoort car. They're both Van Amersfoort drivers, but once every driver is out there, every driver, of course, is out for himself. And Callum Eilert is doing a brilliant job out front. Callum Eilert leads this race then for Prema Power Team. A 1.8 second margin he's got over and above the P2 driver, which is Jake Hughes. A super replay there. What a great shot that is. Through the grass in the uphill section then on this newly resurfaced, I should say, circuit here at Zandvoort.
And Callum Eilert, he had his last race win this season was at the second race in Hungaroring some 9 races ago, and he had a difficult.
Whoa!
Oh, and as Beckman has a look, and
I did say Beckman was getting ever closer to Harrison Newey.
I think that actually probably took the concentration away from Newey, because even he looked a little bit destabilised coming through the first corner, as he wasn't sure if maybe Beckman was actually going to make a move or not. There's a little bit of frailty there, and Beckman will see that. He will try and go for it again, as we see Habsburg just behind, only 7/10 of a second behind Beckman, as Gunther has pulled into just less than half a second behind Habsburg.
However, must Rob Neisink and Fritz van Amersfoort be feeling? They've already seen 2 of their drivers come together, haven't they? And now we've got David Beckman and Harrison Newey there, who are battling over that P4 at the position at the moment. Harrison Newey is P4, David Beckman is P5. Callum Eilert leading the race by some 2.2 seconds. Look at this, brilliant driving from Callum Eilert, got everything absolutely sussed. Jake Hughes is some 2.2 seconds behind him, and in turn he is has a healthy 1.6 margin over Lando Norris, the car that you can see there, before we get into this battle, which is Harrison Newey, David Beckman, Ferdinand Habsburg, and Maximilian Gunther just bringing Ferdinand Habsburg back into his clutches once again now.
And Beckman actually did, if we remember, Beckman started the season with Van Amersfoort Racing, had 3 rounds with the Dutch team. It didn't really work out. The relationship wasn't there, so he's actually moved to the Motor Park team in the meantime. And so we've got someone coming into the pits, and that's Daravala taking his drive-through penalty. So Newey's the only Van Amersfoort driver left in this race. Of course, Mawson and Peake. Well, actually, sorry, Mawson's still running, but near the last. Piquet out of the race. So Newey's holding up the honours for Van Amersfoort at the moment, P4. As we see Daravala dropping all the way down to 16th, 17th place when he comes out of the pits. Daravala's actually had a good few weeks, because he's fifth in the championship now. He's had a good haul of points and a race win recently as well. But so this has really been a bit of a weekend to forget, possibly for the Indian. So let's see if he can actually make more of race 3 tomorrow.
Well, yes, you're absolutely right. I'd completely forgotten that of David Beckman. Apologies, but we have just under 16 and a half minutes of the race remaining, which Callum Eilert is leading by 2.4 seconds over Jake Hughes, Lando Norris, then is Harrison Newey. There's Joel Eriksson, who at the moment running in P12 is still out of the points, which is equally critical. Joel Eriksson on 258 points going into this race, P3 in the championship, but at the moment, for all his efforts there, he is banking nothing.
And he's only moved up that one position because of Daravala's penalty. He's not been able to make a move on Nikita Mazepin in 11th place, despite only being 0.2 of a second coming across the line last time. And this is one of the unfortunate aspects of Hungaroring. You really, really, really need to be close to the driver in front to actually make that move. And
well, here at Zandvoort, the Circuit Park Zandvoort, how much of a difference has it made that this track has been resurfaced as the number 1 car of Joel Eriksson there, you can see, chasing down Nikita Mazepin.
It's it gives the cars a little bit of extra grip as the chemicals are still near the surface of the track, and that'll kind of ebb away over years. But what's actually changed for this morning is we had massive rain showers overnight, and of course yesterday it was the same, massive rain showers overnight then as well. So whatever grip that there was possibly built into the circuit yesterday has been completely washed away. And it wasn't just a rain shower, that was a storm.
It was.
That was a full-on storm we had last night.
Today though, as we continue to watch Joel Eriksson, today, though, the wind has dropped significantly, hasn't it? So what sometimes happens here is that the sand off the dunes is actually blown onto the racing surface, and that makes a difference. And here is Mick Schumacher, who's currently running in P9. There you can see the Prema Power Team driver, Mick Schumacher, chasing down Guan Yu Zhu ahead of him, though they have been closer than this. And I think Mick Schumacher at the moment is just very, very comfortable in that P9 position. Of course, his first year in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. He's got Ralph Aron behind him in P10. Then Nikita Mazepin is P11. Around turns 13 they go then. The Harry Lewandijk turn. Eilert, 2.6 seconds to the good over Jake Hughes, Lando Norris, Harrison Newey, David Beckman, Ferdinand Habsburg, Maximilian Günther, and Guan Yu Zhu. Before we see the Mick Schumacher car there, car number 25 running in P9. And they've all spread themselves out nicely now, haven't they? There's no real close, feisty battles going on at the moment. We still have 13 3/4 minutes of this race still to go.
A notable Schumacher there in 9th place is actually, he is running second in the rookies standings for this race. Norris 3rd place overall, he's the leading rookie, and of course there is obviously a separate podium celebration, a separate championship, a points championship,
yes,
for rookies, which Lando Norris is currently leading.
3 championships in total. Of course, there is the Drivers' Championship and the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. Then there's the Teams Classification. And, of course, as you so rightly mentioned, the Rookie Championship as well. And that currently, the rookie race being led by Lando Norris, who's P3 in the race overall. But there is Mick Schumacher, who indeed was on the podium of the first weekend, wasn't he, for a rookie position? Was he not? Or am I dreaming that?
I think you may actually be, yes. He was the highest finishing rookie in race 2 at Silverstone. And I think, but he was on the overall podium at Monza as well.
Which was his first overall.
That was his first overall podium, which is the second round at Monza in April of this year. You said a moment ago that the gaps opening up between a lot of positions. Yes, we are getting a few gaps, but what we're probably also seeing as well is some of the drivers who've had battles. They're either losing tyre efficiency in the front end because the aero on these cars, there's an awful lot of dirty air and turbulence coming off the back of these cars, and if you're following closely to a car in front, that affects the front end. The car begins to wash away, you begin to get more tyre wear through corners as the grip kind of ebbs away a bit. But alternatively, and this is something Callum Eilert mentioned yesterday, if you're going through a battle and you try a couple of positions, as he had a fight with on screen there, Ferdinand Habsburg, sometimes you just need to drop back for a couple of seconds. Obviously, Maxi Gunther really putting pressure on the car.
Well, he is, and he's coming good now because Ferdinand Habsburg had seen away the challenge from Maximilian Gunther. Look how that has dropped.
But I think this is probably what Gunther's actually done, is rather than actually Habsburg pull away, Gunther's actually dropped back, refreshed, taken a couple of laps to kind of to think about it again, and now he's on a charge.
But what he's got to be careful of is Guan Yu Zhu is not too far behind either. Guan Yu Zhu running in P8. So there is Maximilian Günther, the driver of car number 3. As I mentioned, that new sponsorship and livery this weekend. He's chasing down Ferdinand Habsburg. It's the battle for P6 at the moment. And it's perhaps more critical for anyone. It's more critical for Maximilian Günther in terms of the points haul because he is a competitor, and his nearest competitor in the Drivers' Championship at the moment, Lando Norris, is up the road in P3. So Maximilian Günther just took a little bit of a look there at Ferdinand Habsburg. Was never going to be able to do anything about it because he wasn't close enough. Yeah,
3/10 over the line. It's not close enough. Maxi Günther, by the way, now as you see with the, as you mentioned, the BWT sponsorship, we've seen that on the Auer and Mortara DTM cars, and we also see it on the Ocon and Perez cars in Formula 1. Had quite a lot of investment earlier on this in the last couple of years, and they're actually expanding somewhat into motorsport in the same way we've seen other drinks companies expand in motorsport over the last few years.
Yes.
Gunther, by the way, is getting the pink overalls from the next round of Nürburgring.
Yeah, whatever.
No, he is.
Esteban Ocon, of course, another former star of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship, who's now doing a great job in Formula 1. So many Formula 1 drivers, of course, have made their way there via the FIA Formula 3 European Championship, including one Mr. M. Verstappen, who will be here on track in presentation duties, as to be said, rather than driving duties. But Max Verstappen is very much a guest this weekend, and we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that some of these drivers within the last 14-15 days or so were, of course, in Formula 1 cars at the test at Hungaroring, including the driver that is currently running in P3, which is Lando Norris, who really did a good job. Nikita Mazepin was another one.
Yes, Norris very impressive in the McLaren, really set himself out for the future. And I was chatting to associates of Lando yesterday, wondering what is the future of the young man. And it's possibility, I mean, there's lots of things up in the air. I mean, we could see him in Formula 2 next year. There's also a possibility that we may see him in another season of Formula 3, depending on how his results go. But he's a guy for the future. He is climbing the ranks fast.
Very, very unassuming, nice guy who just goes about his job very quietly, doesn't make a big fuss, does he? But he just lets his driving do the talking. And thus far this season, that driving has been phenomenal.
Absolutely. And for those people who are talking about maybe Lando could go straight into Formula 1, I mean, that's extremely unlikely because there's really nowhere for him to race at this stage. So we will still see him in Junior Formula next year, but in what capacity, absolutely no idea. But for now, he's doing a fantastic job. Third place in this race. He still has pole for race 3 later on, whereas Gunther, I do believe, is still on the second row. So we could see the top step of the championship standings change today, Dave. And this, with only 3 rounds left after this, it's getting a bit tight. We can no longer afford to make mistakes. And it's 2-place grid penalties we've seen today. They're the mistakes.
They hurt.
Yeah, they're
really
the mistakes
hurt.
you need to avoid.
Okay, so Eilert has now extended his lead and his margin to 4.2 seconds. He's doing a very, very good job. Bear in mind, going into this race, Callum Eilert P4 in the championship chase. Maximilian Gunther there, nowhere near close enough to Ferdinand Habsburg. And Guan Yu Zhou and Mick Schumacher getting ever closer now. And Mick Schumacher, in fairness, being chased down by Ralph Aron and Nikita Mazepin as well. This is Lando Norris, who is on for a podium. The way it looks at the moment, he's running in P3 and looks pretty comfortable out there. Has got a huge margin over Harrison Newey, who is running P4, who is a gap behind. And this is a super slow-mo of Lando Norris as he takes more than a bit of curb there and rattles the front of the car. That car engineered, of course, by Carlin Motorsport, based in the UK. And actually, Lando's success has been jolly good for Carlin as well.
Absolutely. Carlin had a difficult year last year. I think it's fair to say they have better driving talent this year than they did in 2016, and the results absolutely show for it. Norris, you say, yeah, they take the curbs hard, but they don't take it as hard as we've seen in other categories this weekend, because you can't go on these cars with the floor so close to the ground. You cannot take too much curb, because he would just rip the floor off and damage your car and basically finish your race, as we see Callum Eilert, who's actually in Belgium. He's that far ahead.
He's doing a great job, isn't he? Because
he's just gone through passport control.
Extended by another couple of tenths over Jake Hughes. It's just, I mean, Prema Power Team who've engineering the Callum Eilert car. And now Maximilian Gunther is just a little bit closer to Ferdinand Habsburg, but it's not close enough. And this is the battle that is going on for P6. Maximilian Gunther is currently P7. It's Ferdinand Habsburg who is P6, and behind them is Guan Yu Zhou. So there is the Ferdinand Habsburg car who, as we have said earlier in this program, he's a very, very difficult driver to get past, because he's very determined in his defence, and why shouldn't he? He's protecting his position. But truthfully, Maximilian Gunther hasn't, bar one opportunity, been close enough even to put a charge on Ferdinand Habsburg. So Ferdinand hasn't had to defend because he's got the pace advantage at the moment over Maximilian Gunther.
The problem Gunther has is he's quicker through the last corner, leading on to start-finish straight. So he got much better speed coming down the start-finish straight and into turn 1. But he's losing speed in the middle section of the circuit, where all the twisty sections is, and that's where he's losing time. But because he's losing time in the middle sections, he's now not actually close enough through the final corner to get a good enough run on the start-finish straight to actually make a pass into turn 1. So it's a catch-22. You lose out in the twisty sections, you get faster in the fast sections, but you're not fast enough. You're not fast enough. So the gap between them per lap, they're generally in around the same lap times at the moment. And it'll be interesting to see if Gunther did get past Habsburg, would he be much faster? But then again, you get to the next problems, is would he be fast enough to even pass David Beckman at this rate, as we see the two of them come across the line?
It's closer now.
It's 0.3 of a second, but it's still not enough.
No, it's not enough. But Callum Eilert has extended his lead now. It's up to 5 seconds over Jake Hughes, who is running in P2. But we're watching this battle at the moment, because certainly in the final 5 minutes of this race, plus 1 lap, Maximilian Gunther is getting closer to Ferdinand Habsburg. And this could be a very, very exciting battle, because Guan Yu Zhou is also trying to buy into this. So it could be a 3-way fight for P6 in just a few moments' time. But the final flourish before the checkered flag will fall. But Ferdinand Habsburg at the moment seems completely and totally untroubled by Maximilian Günther. There is the Guan Yu Zhu car, as I said, just coming into the mix now as well. So Ferdinand Habsburg in car number 62 then is the driver that is P6. Maximilian Günther is chasing him down. Of course, it would be in more valuable points for Maximilian Günther in terms of that points chart, which is, as Lee has said, reaching a critical point now with just a few rounds left. One driver that is showing us how it's done here at Zandvoort Circuit at the moment is Callum Eilert, doing a great job out front. It was 5 seconds last time around, and here a super slow-mo of Callum Eilert, and you just see the vibration being generated through that suspension and steering as he takes to the curbs there. Here is Jake Hughes doing exactly the same. Look, lifting 2 wheels off, and actually the right-hand side of the front nose almost touching the newly resurfaced tarmac here, and Lando Norris in P3. So it's another 5/10 that Callum Eilert has added in the space of a lap, and of course he's got no one to trouble him. He's got he can just focus and concentrate on nailing every corner, getting the perfect entry, getting the perfect exit, and it's thus far been a supreme display from Callum.
One of the things that the drivers will be well aware of, and this is how aware you do have to be as a driver in the Formula 3 European Championship, is in the previous race to this morning with the GT4 Cup that raced here. We did have an incident of one of the GT cars had an oil fire or an oil leak at the chicane. So the teams, obviously, they've seen it on screen with a red flag. The teams have actually made sure the drivers know this, because this is where, in the instructions pre-race, they would say to the drivers, don't go too far, don't go too far to the right of the chicane. As we see a move
Jihan Daravala
on via Nathan down the inside.
Very nearly brushing the pit wall.
But made it look easy on the entry, but via Nathan's really hanging it out wide, but Daravala has that absolutely nailed. That's for 16th place altogether. It's actually, and about Daravala not scoring in this race, he's 5th in the championship at the moment. The 2 drivers who are 6th and 7th, Ferdinand Habsburg and Jake Hughes, big scoring in this race. So that might be a battle for 5th in the championship.
Just 2 minutes plus 1 lap remaining. Ferdinand Habsburg then, for the moment, has seen off the challenges from Maximilian Günther, who's slowly, stealth-like, been closing in on the back of the Ferdinand Habsburg car. Incidentally, Callum Eilert adds another few tenths to his lead. It's now up to some 6 seconds, but this is where the real battle is going to come in the final stages of this race. I think it's going to be between Ferdinand Habsburg and Maximilian Günther, although I have to say Ferdinand Habsburg really does seem to have the measure of Maximilian Günther behind him, and he's not troubled by it at all at the moment.
And we've spoken an awful lot about Günther in this race and the things that he has to do and where he's getting affected by the car in front. Habsburg himself has actually driven a very, very, very good race. I think he's done a very good job. He's not flinched under the pressure from Günther in any way, shape or form. He's held his head, he's held his position, and he's going to get a nice haul of points for 6th place.
In fairness, he's had the pace. I mean, Günther hasn't actually been able to. Now, notwithstanding the fact that we don't know what tyres they're running in comparison to the tyres that they're allowed over the course of a weekend, but he certainly hasn't had the ability to really put a serious charge on Ferdinand Habsburg, and truthfully, with just 50 seconds and 1 lap remaining, I'm not absolutely convinced that is going to happen now. Eilert, 6.5 seconds up the road now, as you quite rightly said. Not only is he checked out of Circuit Park Zandvoort, he's in Harlem enjoying a cup of coffee now, I should think, such as his margin at the front, 6.5 seconds. The order is Eilert, Hughes, Norris, then it's Harrison Newey, P4, then it's Beckman, Habsburg, Günther, Zhu, Schumacher and Ralph Aron rounding out the points scoring places for P10.
And Eilert needs this. This is a good result for him, not just in terms of points of the championship. I said his last race victory was at Hungaroring 2 months ago, so he needs this to kind of really kick-start his season altogether and his position in the...
It's a restart for him, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, and it's been a very, very impressive display. 2 laps left to run in this FIA Formula 3 European Championship. That's 2 more laps for this young man. Callum Eilert then from Hertfordshire in the number 53 car engineered by Prema Power Team. He's just been adding tenths and tenths and tenths as he rounds the final turn. and will break the timing beam. Callum Eilert will add yet another tenth or two, I would suspect, to his time. He's on his final lap now. Callum Eilert then doing a great job in that car. He really has been completely untroubled. I say add another few tenths, it's 5 tenths. I mean, that's a huge margin that he's just added to and added to and added to. He's really got the measure of this.
Absolutely, and in second place and third place there we see Jake Hughes and Lando Norris. Lando's on a real run at the moment. He's really brought himself back into the championship over the last 3 rounds. Norris ring Spa, and here that's 4. He's had his last 6 races have been 4 wins in 6 races.
Yes.
This will be his, at the end of this race, if it stays like this will be his 5th podium in 7, including those 4 race wins. And he's just outscored Gunther and Ericsson to.
Whoa! This is Joey Mawson. Forgive me interrupting you, and Makino.
He's taken him coming into turn 1, I believe. That is a change of position for 14th and 15th place, and they are right behind Andres as well.
So we are on the final lap then. The final lap that Callum Eilert is leading, and he has just a few more turns to do. And there he is. Callum Eilert is heading up towards the final turn number 12, then turn number 13, the long sweeping Ari Lyondike turn. Then he will see the checkered flag that will be unfurled, ready for Callum Eilert, who takes race win in race 2 here in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. A brilliant drive from Callum Eilert to take the win. Look how far he's ahead of the P2 driver. There is Jake Hughes. 7.3 seconds behind for P2. Then it was Lando Norris that takes P3. Here we see Harrison Newey taking P4. Then it's David Beckman, P5. Then we will see Ferdinand Habsburg, Maximilian Gunther, Guan Yu Zhu, Mick Schumacher, and rounding out the points-paying positions is Ralph Aron, Nikita Mazepin just out of the points in P11. Well done to Callum Eilert. A supreme drive.
And Harry Newey, that is his 3rd, 4th position of the season, equaling again his best in European Formula 3. Good effort from the young Briton, who's that will actually take him well into the top 10 of the championship standings as well, ahead of Ralph Aron and Mick Schumacher.
Callum Eilert then, who has driven supremely and superbly. And there was a wave from Lando Norris as he came past. And a really, really good drive indeed. Very polished performance, I think, is what I would like to say. You know, he didn't. He had to do it at the start and make sure that he didn't give any advantage to Jake Hughes. Then, of course, he had the safety car really early on and had to do the safety car restart. Very polished performance from Callum Eilert. Well done, sir.
Absolutely, we're going to see happy faces at Prema Power Team. We're going to see happy faces at High Tech with Jake Hughes finishing 2nd. We're going to see happy faces at Carlin with their man finishing P3. We'll see some happy faces at Van Amersfoort with Newey P4, although they will also be a little bit glum following that incident between Piquet and Mawson on the opening lap of the race. I saw Piquet retired and Mawson mired down in 14th as he came across the line. Beckman will be happy enough with 5th place, I suppose, as you see the marshals on track now guiding. Well, they'll let the top 3 through. So you see Callum Eilert goes through, they'll let Hughes through, and they'll let Norris through, and then the rest of the field will pull into Parc Ferme. 2 podiums come up now, as we know it is the overall podium, as I said, which will have Eilert, Hughes and Norris, and then following that will actually be the rookie podium, which Norris is the leading rookie driver. So you see a shot of Callum Eilert taking the flag. 2nd in the rookie standings into this race is Mick Schumacher, who finished 9th overall. And 3rd in the rookie race here at Zandvoort is Joey Mawson, who was 14th overall. Daravala, the 5th place rookie, down in 16th, and Sato, the 6th place rookie, who finished 18th and last as they came across the flag. And the Prema Power Team boys clapping and celebrating a really faultless drive there. And heel click. There we go.
How difficult has this been for Joel Eriksson, who has finished out of the points?
That's hard. But we saw coming into the start of this race weekend, they noted the sort of press release from the Swedish media group, which is actually one person.
Yes, we're really overplaying his place, aren't you?
Hello, Matthias. But they noted that qualifying is tricky for Ericsson, and look what's happened. He's qualified poorly and not got it done. So we see the results for race 20.
Callum Eilert takes the win from Jake Hughes. Then it was Lando Norris, Harrison Newey, David Beckman, Ferdinand Habsburg. Then it was Maximilian Günther, Guan Yu Zhu, Mick Schumacher, Ralph Aron. Before we saw Nikita Mazepin, Joel Eriksson, Kevin Andres, Joey Mawson, Tadasuke Makino, Jihan Daravala, Amaya Vaidyanathan. And then it was Sato, and of course the only car that we lost was that of Pedro Piquet right at the start as Callum Eilert. This super slow-mo shot that is of Callum Eilert celebrating and doing a great job, and congratulated by the Prema Power team, and Jane as well down there to congratulate Callum Eilert, who takes a very, very convincing win. Finishing some 7.3 seconds ahead of Jake Hughes. Super slow-mos to the top three then. P3, and the best of the rookies goes to Lando Norris. P2 goes the way of the British driver, number 34, the High-Tech GP. It's Jake Hughes. And as I have said, and I make no apologies for doing so, a very, very accomplished drive from the Prema Power team driver, Callum Eilert, who takes the win in race number 20.
And it was all an all UK top three there, Dave.
Yes.
Which is something we haven't seen that often this season. We've had plenty of podiums where it's maybe been Eilert and Norris on them, but it's good to see Hughes up there as well. His third podium of the year, his second place finish. That win still isn't, he still hasn't taken that win yet, but I'm sure it's something that will come for that high-tech racer in the future.
So standing by for the podium. Mick Schumacher there.
He'll be taking his place on the rookie podium ceremony in a few moments' time.
So Callum Eilert P1, Jake Hughes P2, Lando Norris P3. Bernd Mailander is here to make the trophy presentation to Callum Eilert. Of course, the Formula One safety car driver and no mean racing driver himself, Bernd Mailander. I've enjoyed many a conversation with Bernd. Manfred Sandbichler, the boss of Hankook Tyres, then that makes the team's trophy to Prema Power Team. Here's Bernd once again, and Jake Hughes, the recipient of that. And Manfred Sandbichler once again makes the trophy presentation, this time to Lando Norris. So the 1, 2, 3 up there on the podium. Prema Power Team in red, Carlin Motorsport in blue. You can see below the podium. And the drivers all getting together then for the... Lando said, just make way here. Stand aside.
Thomas, your photographer, getting his shots in. Watch the Prema guy.
Yes.
Watching the Prema guy.
Lando is there. He's better and quicker than anybody else in terms of the champagne.
The Prema engineer is giving it a run for it.
Callum is losing out here. He can't get the top of the bottle. Come on, Callum. Now he goes for it. Fantastic stuff.
And you know, Dave, they don't get new race suits later on. They're actually hung out on the side of the motorhomes in the paddock.
In the Drivers' Championship, look who's at the top now.
1 point.
By 1 point, Lando Norris over Maximilian Gunter. Joel Eriksson is still P3, but Callum Eilert is coming back into it now.
But the problem for Eriksson, he's now more than the race win behind Gunther and Norris there. The gap really has extended in that race where he just did not score.
So the FIA Formula 3 European Championship, of course, another race to come before the end of this event here at Zandvoort. Comes right at the end of the day, doesn't it? But nonetheless, so looking forward to that as we see a super slow-mo of Callum Eilert celebrating on the top step of the podium. He won the race by a margin of some 7.3 seconds. A very dominant display from the young British driver Callum Eilert, driving for Prema Power Team and getting
absolutely
thoroughly soaked, didn't he? And some of the spectators here that have enjoyed a great race from the FIA Formula 3 European Championship, and as I mentioned, another one to come later in the day as well. So the rookie podium now, we can see Lando Norris, of course, double bubble for him because he's up on the podium as best of the rookies. And then it's Mick Schumacher. And would you believe Joey Mawson, look, who actually finished the race, P14.
Well, celebration there for Lando Norris, Mick Schumacher and Joey Mawson on the rookie podium. Race 2 here at FIA European Formula 3 Championship at Zandvoort. As Norris taking not just the points lead in the general classifications, but also massively extending his points lead in the rookie championship, which Jehan Duravala is in second place, Mick Schumacher's third, and Joey Mawson fourth overall. Duravala non-scoring today after a drive-through penalty during the race. Mawson, not the biggest smile on his face. He had an incident with Pedro Piquet on that opening lap, which dropped him very far down the order after a pit stop. He was hoping for more today, but he will take this this podium celebration nonetheless, and look forward to race 3, which is happening in just under 5 hours' time as they reach for the bubbly. And Norris away fastest with the champagne for the second time. And Mawson really getting it. Very good drive from Lando Norris after a penalty following an incident in qualifying. Started third, finished third, fastest rookie. Mick Schumacher 9th overall in the end. And as we see a slow-mo of Norris, the 31 car, the Carlin car, is he making his way around this beautiful, picturesque Zandvoort circuit.